Abby Zartman.
Let's try that again because I was talking over it.
Hi, thanks for joining us.
Oh, God, that was so bad. That was so cheap. Oh, no.
Hi, I'm Abby Zartman.
And I'm Jim Zartman, and together we do couples coaching. So we are a couple who coaches other couples. And in our previous episode, we were talking a little bit about the stages that relationships go through as they go from sort of the beginning or the setting in which you find yourself attracted to another person all the way to commitment. So through the attraction, infatuation stage, through the dating and enjoyment, and also evaluation stage, as you move towards deciding whether it's time to call it, end it, or you want to make a commitment. One thing I didn't mention actually in that episode is while we were dating, every few weeks or every month, I would sort of check in with you and I would say, like, are you good? Do you want to call it now? Is this as far as you want to take it, or do you want to keep going?
I remember that.
And then you would say, oh, I want to keep going.
Yeah, it was helpful. It made it less assumptive,
Yeah.
And it helped me tune into myself to see, oh yeah, how am I doing? And do I want to keep doing this? And am I comfortable with this stage? Do I want to up it a little bit or back off? Yeah. I appreciated that.
Yeah, and then through each of those stages, you go a little bit further into commitment. And this time we're talking a little bit about the cycle that happens within the context of a relationship. We pull away from a lot of how people talk about it, where they say there's these stages that happen in every relationship. But I think once you're actually in the place of commitment, there's more of a cycle. There's this process. There's this flow that you kind of get into where you have to revisit certain things, or a new circumstance rises up, or a new issue rises up, and you have to process it well again. And so that's what we want to talk about today. And in coaching, these are some of the things that we work on with people. So hopefully you'll find some of these things useful. Often people look at tips for the relationship in like premarital counseling, where they're so, doughy-eyed or in love or like just head over heels for the other person that they can hardly hear like advice and process and slowing down, or everything goes along fine, and then it's not until they really hit crisis or they're not getting along that they seek help or try and find tips. But we'd really recommend like trying to apply good wisdom and good process of relating and good frameworks and like good people in your lives. Seek out mentors wherever you can find them. That's one of the biggest things I would say, wherever you are in your relationship, especially I think if you're in a good place. Like use the good times maybe to develop the skills that would help you through the times that will come that are harder.
I mean, we were really blessed being surrounded by a lot of people that had a lot of wisdom that we really respected and who knew us well, knew us for a long amount of time. So I definitely think that made it easier for us. But for people who might not, feel connected to other people or have just people that can really speak into their life that they respect. Maybe you've moved far and you've lost some connection with some people and are now in a new situation. Now's the time to really seek out people that you really respect and look up to, and in order to be surrounded by people who can give you an honest feedback, not just feedback you want to hear, but really good, honest feedback.
Yeah, people who are going to call you to your best self as they are cheering for you as a person.
Yeah.
Not someone who just wants to correct you, or not someone who's just like everything you do is fine. Like wise people, the people that are worth seeking out, is the people who sort of, that they're cheering for you, but that that they also are willing to tell you the hard truth. And one of the things we actually almost put in our wedding vows, we didn't, was still a value that got instilled, was this idea of we're not going to talk negatively about our partner to other people, especially to friends, because like so many people do that. That's kind of how they like, I just want to vent about my partner to my friends. But there's enough psychological data that says like the venting actually increases the poison in the system. It doesn't dispel it. Mm-hmm. And so like that getting into our system too, even to this day, like I have a mentor, coach type of figure in my life that if I'm having an issue, I'm going to process first with him because he is going to tell me the truth. He's going to give me a different perspective, and he's cheering for us as a couple. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really good to try and look for people in your community who can provide, that kind of a thing, or connect with a relationship coach. You can hit us up on theartofgrowth.org and set up a time to meet with us or talk to us about some of this stuff. But today we want to talk about sort of this cycle that happens in a relationship, which is things that happen that are hard, a frustration, something that happens between two people, but often it's not even just between two people. A lot of times it's circumstantial. It's like stuff happens in our life, like to all of us. Mm-hmm. We've been through all kinds of stuff. We've been through health issues, moving cities, miscarriage, house issues and job loss, to financial issues, to all of the things that come along with having a kid and trying to learn how to be parents. Like, we've faced so many of these different things in our time together. So some of this stuff comes out of talking to other people and seeing other relationships and just what we've learned in this world. But also a lot of it is very personal, and a lot of it is very experiential to us.
Yeah, I really like what you brought up about not bad-mouthing our partner with other people. I think that early on, that really increased our trust in each other. So if I knew that I was frustrated at you, or like that we'd had this talk that didn't go super well, like I knew that you weren't out telling all your buddies about how your wife did X, Y, and Z and wasn't, and so it just really increased my trust for you, knowing that we would get past this, and that I knew that it's not saying, oh, well, we just keep all of our issues hidden, but that there were still a few people that we did trust enough to work out our issues. So it wasn't like we were, just ignoring it and putting it under a rug, that we weren't just keeping that stuff hidden and swallowing it. But that there wasn't that bashing. That was a really, really important piece to me.
Because long before we had any kind of like Enneagram knowledge or really understood what it means that you're a 9, that I'm an 8, before we know what the space between us kind of looks like. Because every kind of combination, like some people wanted us to do podcasts with like, well, what is it like if a 5 is married to a 1 or something? But like to do that many podcasts, that would only hit a very small demographic of the people who have that exact relationship, but it's also impossible. It's like it's 9 to the 9th power of episodes, which is an incredible amount of combinations. But I don't even think the types so much matter, but like we do create a certain space between us. Like the way it works between an 8 and 9 is going to be a specific kind of a thing, of course, but that's not going to look the same as another 8-9 couple.
Correct. Yeah.
Because we are all very, very unique. We definitely hit a lot of things that were difficult before we had sort of this knowledge base or this kind of tool of communication, of seeing the other through a particular lens where we go, oh, that's how you see the world. That's how you experience life. And if anything, it kicked up what I think is the centerpiece of relationship, which is curiosity. Because it made me even more curious, like, wait, how are you seeing this world? You're not seeing it the same way I am? You're not experiencing this in the same way I am, which it seems like a no-brainer because every couple, like if you're having a disagreement, you're not seeing things the same way. Mm-hmm. And yet we constantly kind of project on the other person like they should be seeing this.
They should be more like me.
Yeah. I mean, just to go vulnerable from the very beginning, I often say to people like the biggest mistake I ever made in our marriage is for years treating you like you needed to be more like me. Like you needed to be more driven. You needed to be more intense. You needed to be going after more things. And you're just never going to be that way. And I think there's so many things that create frustration in a relationship depending on the combination. And it's just unique to ours was this thing of like me going after certain things and expecting like, well, you should be doing it at the same pace with the same energy. And like knowing in Enneagram terms, like nobody has more physical energy than the 8. Nobody can go for as long and hard because we'll just like push ourselves and then not even realize that we're tired and be angry when we finally get tired because I can't believe we ran out of energy. And you knowing like that's not me and me not really seeing the wisdom of that. I understood rest as a theoretical concept, but understanding the wisdom of rest for years. And so a lot of couples, there's going to be one that's a lot more like intense and driven and fast paced and moving, and another one that like kind of slows things down, that wants to process, that understands rest and the value of slowing down.
Yeah. I remember early on so Jim is a morning person. He gets up like really early. And I tend to like to stay up a little bit later, although, having a kid now, I get tired. But my natural bent, I think, is more towards stay up late. And, if I could get up around 8:39 every day, that would be pretty awesome. But, I think one of the biggest frustrations was like, here, you want to get up early and I want to stay up late. And so I was always frustrated, like, well, when are we supposed to talk? Like, when are we supposed to, have our conversations? Like, I'm not ready in the morning and you're not ready at night and we're both working during the day. Yeah. But then the beauty when you have children, too, is that, well, Jim took the morning shift and I took the evening shift. And I was like, oh, finally, the frustration is paying off. And now it's a beautiful thing.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of funny because there's certain things that you think of as frustrations, but then when you come upon a different setting in this long journey together, you start to see or like a reason for it or a purpose for it. Mm-hmm. So I think, yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, having the grace for each other. Like you might be really frustrated with your partner right now, but then like in a different season, the frustrations can become,
total gift.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So I want to talk through this cycle that happens within the context of relationships. So there is something happens and we either get frustrated, we get disillusionment because things are not the way we thought they were. This is not the person I thought this was. This person changed on me. Like something happened. We get disillusioned and we get discouraged. Like, what does this mean? We project out in the future. What does this mean for our relationship? We start reinterpreting the past of like what the relationship has been through so far. And there is disruption in the relationship. And, then we have to like lean into this phase we're going to call acceptance and curiosity. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, which will hopefully lead into recommitment and gratitude. Because the thing is, I hate to admit this, and we talked a little bit about this, and I did this more than you did, but like I had this idea of like what a relationship would look like, what a marriage would look like, what you would look like when you were more like me, like all of these different things. Like in so many of us, we kind of fall in love with a projection to a certain extent. Like we don't even do it intentionally, but we're attracted to the familiar. We talked about that last time. And so this person who is going to be in my mind a certain way and then inevitably violate our expectation. And as I said, an expectation is a resentment waiting to happen. And so then these things come up and you sort of have to go through dealing with that and your world kind of falls apart. Your belief system falls apart a little bit. But the thing is like now I realize like I have a lot of gratitude for who you actually are. And before I didn't have like gratitude, there was just like the expectation of what I thought I wanted you to be. But I think that a lot of couples go through this. There's like the projection we fall in love with, at least, that was true for a lot of people I talked to, and it's true for me. Well, it's not – I shouldn't say that because it's not all one thing, but it's like this mixed bag of like who this person is and this projection of our own expectations and what we've dreamed about since we were like a young child and then we imagined falling in love and all of these different things that we sort of – we have all these expectations from a whole history and then we show up with this person. I just dump it in your lap like, here, hold this, and it's this weight that no one else can really carry. So then that all like crumbles and that all falls apart. And then you have to go, well – who is this person? Mm-hmm. And if you're lucky, you get to fall in love with who the person actually is. as you ask questions about who is this person, get really curious about them, and then have gratitude for who they actually are. But that was just like sort of my perspective kind of coming into the relationship.
Yeah. I mean, I think I remember early on, like, needing to have a little bit of grace for that. So even when we were, planning our wedding, I don't know if I'd thought a ton about music, but talking with you right away, it was like, oh, you have specific things that you've thought about for a really long time. And so I'm not going to be the bride that just has it all planned out without you having any say. Like, you had thought about the music that you wanted played or didn't want played. And that was kind of like the expectation, like having grace for your expectation.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's like a micro example of a macro thing that actually happens in a much deeper way. Like, there's like the little manifestations that pop up that we can point to and be like, well, that was different. But there's actually a whole world actually underneath those things where we think we have this idea of how things are supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And you basically, every relationship is putting two people together who have a whole imagination and a world and expectations of what's going to be. And then you put them together and watch that fall apart.
Oh, the beauty and joy
of a relationship. Isn't it wonderful? But that's the weird thing is, like, at one point you go, oh no, what does this mean? And then at this point, and what I would encourage other people, if you're feeling that way, is like, yeah, but there's actually something really cool on the other side of it, which is you get to grow and see who this person actually is.
Yeah.
So like we said, there was these different times in our relationship where certain things came up, or we had to, learn about the other when our expectations were not met, or there was a resentment boiling. And we talked about one of the things helping us was to not talk negatively about the other to our friends, to other people, to speak negatively about the other person, but to work things out together. That's one of the super practical things that helped us. So we're going to talk about a couple of those really practical things that helped us.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really helped us in our journey is just treating each other, using manners respectfully, kindly, like any polite person would.
Yeah, it's always baffled me that couples will treat each other worse than they will a total stranger. I remember hearing this story about this pastor who was meeting with a couple, and the woman in frustration said to the pastor, like, I wish he would just treat me like a Denny's waitress. He's so kind to Denny's waitresses. And it's true, we have this thing where we'll treat someone else with a stranger. We'll be very kind, we'll be completely respectful, we'll use our manners. But it's like in the context of the most intimate relationships, we have this thing where we feel like we can throw that out.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like, that's what can save the day, is just being like, I'm just going to use manners
Yeah.
with this person. I'm going to be a little more respectful. I'm going to treat them as well as I would a stranger.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. I don't know where that came in, to think that, oh, because we're married and we just are committed to this person, that we're just going to throw out and be able to yell and scream and treat someone poorly. I don't know where that kind of came in, but yeah, just having basic manners, basic.
Yeah. It's huge.
Yeah.
It absolutely is huge. The next thing we wanted to talk about was actually really hard for me at the beginning. So anytime an issue comes up, I'm a fast processor. I know what I think immediately. If I don't know what I think, I'll figure it out as I open my mouth. And you were not that way. So when a conflict came up, we wanted to respond to it very differently.
Yes, very differently. So I think we alluded to it a little bit in the first part of this, but I am definitely a slow cooker, and I don't know how I feel all the time. And I'll have this gut reaction, like, this is not going well, I'm not happy, but I don't even necessarily know what's wrong. And I don't feel very eloquent. And so when we have a disagreement or something, I need to go away and have time to process. And I have gotten a lot faster. I mean, I remember the time when we almost broke up, and I needed, I thought, a few days. So I was just really upset.
Which was an eternity of torture for me.
Yeah, Jim was like, we are going to solve this and we're going to solve it now.
Like that was my thing. Is like you have a problem, you just solve it. You talk about it, you fix it right now. But you were like, but I don't know what I think right now. Like I don't know how to do that in this space. And so your need to pull away, like I couldn't understand it. But I think what we developed over time, what was really helpful to me was like me knowing you'll be back. Like I'm going to go away and I'm going to figure out what I think about this.
Yeah.
Because I take longer, but I'll be back.
Yeah. Well, and during those days, I realized, that I don't have any more clarity really, because it was a conversation that I did need to work out with you, but I needed that really long space just in order to learn that. Like, yes, there's times when I need to get away, for a short amount of time, but I can't just figure this all out on my own. This is something that I am going to have to process with you.
Yeah, and I think that's like an interesting learning for a lot of people is like, how much space do I need to actually withdraw to process, to see how I feel? Mm-hmm. And then how do I then not just leave it there, but actually come back to the other person and say, okay, now I'm ready. And this is the part we have to process together.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, because the individual never disappears in the relationship. Like I think a lot of times people think, well, it's just now it's all about the us. And then other couples, it's like, no, we're still just totally individual, but we, are still connected in some way. Mm-hmm. But it's really finding out the balance for each couple. Like where is the individual space needed and where do we then really have to come together to work on something, to figure something out?
Yeah.
And no one can tell you like what those degrees are.
What the magic number is.
No,
yeah.
Like there isn't a certain thing. Like you have to do that in the space you create between the two of you.
Yeah, that's good. And something that we've learned recently, or that's really been helpful to me through Brene Brown's work, is that statement, this is the story that I'm telling myself. I think that that's been helpful for us. 13 years into marriage, I can still project what I think that you're feeling or where you're at. Like I can lose some of that curiosity. And so I think just getting to the place where, this is what I'm telling myself, I think really helps you to not take it maybe as personally, like it gives clarity. It just is more of an offering rather than this judgmental statement.
Yeah. Well, and it's more honest. Like, because we don't actually know what the other person is thinking. We don't actually know where they're coming from. Just because they made a certain action does not mean what we always think it means. So that phrase, this is the story I'm telling myself, it gives us a little bit of distance to be the observer, to go, I'm experiencing a thing, and it's not the whole of reality. Yeah. Because that's how we tend to think of like things. Well, this person did this, therefore it means this, and therefore this. No one has ever gotten that 100% right within the context of their own mind. Like, that's actually why we function in relationships, is because we have to realize, like, I don't see all of this, and I don't really understand this other person. And that's good, like, because it keeps us curious. Because where curiosity disappears from a relationship, the relationship is not actually existing. There's not really a space between, because I've eliminated your voice altogether by not asking questions about where you're coming from on it.
Yeah.
So we do have this little tip as far as being in conflict, which is something we highly value, which is how do you stay connected within conflict?
Yeah, we did allude to it in the last episode, but we had mentioned that when we were really in conflict, holding hands helped us realize that we're not against each other, coming from opposite sides and attacking each other, But when we held hands, which felt super unnatural, we were coming together and working to solve the problem, whether it's shoulder to shoulder or, you put your hand on my knee or something. Like, it just is that very gentle reminder, hey, we are still in this 100%, and it's not attacking the other person. It's us together, and we're gonna solve this together. And sometimes it is just a matter of space, and sometimes things do just pass. But I think that helps put it all into perspective.
I feel like we could actually do a whole episode on that right there at some point, which is like keeping connection in the context of conflict. Yeah, that's a whole big thing, and you kind of have to design that for yourself. That's something that I would love to see a lot more couples do, because I do think that there is something about that touch that we know it like lowers our blood pressure. We know that it releases certain hormones that cause relaxation. And so doing that in the middle of a conflict and like taking a few deep breaths beforehand, you can take it from feeling like a 10 to feeling like a 6, which is a lot more manageable to interact with each other in that space. If you can just bring it down a few notches, it's hugely helpful.
Yeah. It's interesting. We should start doing that with our daughter, maybe. I hadn't thought about that. I definitely have used the part where I'm super upset, and so I need to create space where I'll, go in the bathroom and shut the door and calm down, and so that my reactions can be more stable.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something to think about and process.
That's really good. So we've sort of moved slightly, and you'll notice it's almost seamlessly from the situation that's frustrating us, the discouragement, the disillusion, the frustration, into this acceptance and curiosity phase where we start saying things like the story I'm telling myself, or I start asking questions to figure out where you're coming from. And I say acceptance and curiosity because I don't want to say acceptance as everything is fine. Like, I just accept this reality and I accept you fully as who you are in every way, because that's kind of bull. I don't want you to accept the worst parts of me as permanent realities. Like, that's not real acceptance. Acceptance is, this is where we are right now, and we need to kind of deal with this thing as it is right now. So I don't think acceptance says everything is fine. Acceptance is, this is where we are. That's okay for today, and we can move through this. So it really is, I think, a paired thing. But the way to move through it is this curiosity, just saying, I don't fully understand this. I don't fully understand where you're coming from. And I want to ask questions to kind of figure out who you are, what you need, what are you thinking, what are you feeling, how are you experiencing this?
Just a couple of weeks ago, I was feeling really, I don't know if the word is overwhelmed or frustrated, whatever, fill in the blank. But I knew that I needed some face-to-face time with you. So we sat down, and I think that we were both in a pretty good place, like as in the day went well. And so I was feeling more open, and I just kind of went through and told you all the things that were wrong. I just I had been holding it up. And so it was kind of this vomit of all the things that weren't working or weren't going well in our life, or in my life, I should say, because you're in a pretty good place. Just your reaction to that was very normalizing, like, okay, I can see that, and it wasn't like you didn't go into solve it mode, like, here's all the things I need to fix and change, even though later we talked about it and you were like, wow, there's a lot we need to fix and change.
Right.
But then, so you said, oh, this is going to be like, wow, we have a lot of work. And then the next day, like, I was in a really good place. And you're like, what just happened? And I'm like, yeah, I just needed to like almost journal to you, like just writing it down and getting it out of my mind was very cleansing And so sometimes I think maybe we just need to do that, is have this space for one another just to listen. Like maybe even asking some questions about, what do you need from me? Like, is there something you do need me to work on? Or is this like a listening time?
Yeah.
Do you just need to talk and share what's inside of your heart right now? How we respond to people bringing things is like critical, I think. Like downplaying, de-escalating the situation, listening, and then asking those questions like, what do you need from me?
And I think a couple of years ago, if you would have brought up that same list or started talking about the same things, I would have probably gotten defensive and would have probably been like, well, here's why everything is actually fine. And instead of just kind of asking questions, like, and just being like, well, can I tell me more about that? And like, what else are you feeling? And because it was funny, we were actually supposed to record these podcasts the next day, but it was like, oh, we are not ready to do that. and you were just kind of like, hey, okay, and we will record tomorrow. I was like, oh, we're not recording tomorrow. Like we're not ready to do that. Like we have to like work on space between us. And like before we even recorded these podcasts, the reason we're able to sit here and do this is because our daughter is in camp this week, and we got to have like a 7-hour date on Monday where we talked about everything we wanted to talk about and dream and process. And what do we want to share with people? Like, how do we want to share our story? And what do we think are some of the tips that would be helpful to share in this context, since we don't have the couple in front of us coaching their specific things, like just a few things. Like we had to go through all of that in order to even do this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely not okay, I'm healthy and therefore I can share out of the wisdom that I have. It's processing things, getting to a good place. And then this really doesn't have to do with relationships necessarily, but I think a lot of times I can get in the habit of invalidating myself. I think I have to be in this perfect place and I have to have it all together. And how could I offer anybody advice if I'm struggling in this area? Yeah, I'm definitely in a season where I'm learning not to invalidate myself and thinking that I'm perfect, and just being like, yeah, what is the puzzle piece that I have? What can I offer? And then receive in the areas, and together, we can all make a puzzle. And I'm not responsible for having all the pieces in the puzzle. Like, what can I just bring to the table?
It was even intimidating, like the first time we sat down with a couple to coach them or to walk them through premarital or anything like that. It was very overwhelming because it's like, oh, but we don't have everything figured out. Like, what do we do? And I was like, well, yes, we have some tools. Yes, we've established some habits that are healthy that helped. But honestly, the thing that we bring is to our relationship is the curiosity of each other. And so the biggest thing we bring, I think a lot of times in a coaching session, is that we're actually bringing curiosity to this other couple. Like we're asking them questions about what it's like to be them, what it's like to be them in the relationship. What is the relationship like? We're asking more questions than we're ever giving advice, honestly. And what's so funny is when you ask people enough questions, like their own internal wisdom can emerge and they actually find some of the best solutions that are, I think, better than some of what we could ever come up with or other things that I've read could ever come up with.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah. That is the pattern that has created the most health in our relationship, is like kind of coming to that place of curiosity, leaning into that space. There's so many different ways I would want to talk about this curiosity piece, but so much of it is better modeled in person. And at some point we'll have like another couple on the podcast with us and we'll talk through some of this stuff. But just this idea of curiosity, and I hate to leave it in this sort of idea realm because I'd love to put a lot more flesh on it. Like we've been trying to with some of these stories, but I think of it like this. A lot of times when couples get together, they stay up late talking. They talk nonstop. They're texting each other. They're calling each other. They're doing video chats with each other, whatever it is. At the beginning, there's so much curiosity about who is this person that I'm feeling drawn towards. And there's this overwhelming sense of, who are you? I want to know everything about you. I want to know who you are. And then we sort of get to a point where we go, okay, I got it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know who you are now.
Yeah. Like, how could I not? I've spent so many years with you.
Yeah, we've been together for years. I know all of your stories. I know all of everything you're going to say. I know what you're going to say in that kind of environment. But really, when curiosity goes out the window, so does the relationship. Because one of the things is you don't know everything. That's something we always talk about. When we get together with another couple or something, we're sitting there talking, something always comes out. We're like, I didn't know that. Like, I didn't know that about you. I didn't know you were feeling that way. I didn't know you had that experience last week.
Yeah.
It's
Some of
cool.
our best times have been when we have another couple over and we all get chatting and I'm like, oh, I didn't know that about you, or why didn't I ever know that or hear that? And so it is really rewarding to
That's a
get
good
to
way to
meet
put it.
people.
It's rewarding. It's like, oh, I just found this other little new nugget about this person. Every person is an eternally deep well. I don't even know myself. I'm constantly discovering things about myself that I find fascinating. like I think anyone
That
who
is very
goes on
true.
anyone goes on an exploration of self-expression, like they're going to find things about themselves that they find like, oh, I didn't even understand that about myself. I'm growing in self-awareness. Like, let alone this other person who you're not, who is an endless mystery unto themselves. Like, the curiosity of the other should never run out in a relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot more I could say about that process as you go through the experience that causes frustration or disillusionment or discouragement into acceptance through reality and curiosity. And so I think it goes into this recommitment and gratitude. Recommitment is interesting. I always thought it was weird when people like renewed their wedding vows or something, but I was just having breakfast with a guy the other day, and he was talking about how this couple realizes that they're kind of different people every 7 years. And so every 7 years they remarry the new person. And I thought that was so fascinating that they would kind of do that. Like, I want to actually marry the person you are now. There is this recommitting that you can do it as if you take a lot of value in ceremony and all that, if that means something to you. But
Yes, so ladies, whoever wants like a new dress or loves flowers and was like, oh, I didn't like my flowers the first time around.
we should do this every 7 years. But there is something. There's almost like this. I remember we even put in our wedding vows that, like, I choose you daily. And it was very important to us that we had this thing in there at the time where it's just like it's a daily thing. It's a daily process of choosing you, of choosing to be in a relationship with you. That in itself has this language of recommitment. I've moved through this frustration with you. I accept who you are, but I also want things to be better, and we're going to process through this curiosity. And on the other side of this, like, I commit to you. I commit to this new thing I see in you. I commit to you as you are on this day, even in the light of this issue. And I think when we're able to do that enough times, we do get to know the person who's actually there, and that produces so much gratitude. As a Nate, like, having to learn to lean into vulnerability has been a really difficult thing. But one of the things that, like, moves me to tears, which even happened in the last episode, was talking about, like, the gratitude I have for our relationship, how thankful I am that I have a partner who not just has a good amount of understanding about who I am, but who can actually help me access the best parts of myself. So often in my gratitude practice, and I just say thank you, like, I try to be very present to all the immediate surroundings. If I'm like surfing or something, like, thank you for the ocean that's moving under me right now, for the wildlife surrounding me, for the smell in the air, for the breeze, for this board that I'm standing on. But always in my gratitude is like being grateful for you, being thankful for you, and being specific about that, being thankful for the exchange we had that day, for the hug I got, how I was, just held there for 30 seconds before we went out the door for the day. Such gratitude being in there, which helps pull through everything else that has come up.
Thanks. That was beautifully said.
You're welcome. That's good.
Yeah, it is. It's a journey. And I think, a lot of times we can be more, I want this person to love me this way. Like, can't they see that they're not loving me in this way, or these are the things I need, or, and we can, in our minds, get very like negative. And a really good practice is just being thankful and grateful. To start out small and be like, I saw how Jim walked the dogs for me this morning. I saw how hard he's working to provide for our family. I can see how he's working on loving Vera, even when it's really hard sometimes. Sometimes when I feel like I'm not getting my needs met in a certain way, just looking and being like, no, I'm not going to tell myself that story today. I'm going to choose to look at all the ways how you love me. And then that does make my heart open up in a different way. And I think that's true for life in general. I used to, have some panic attacks in college. And I remember just how I got out of those was not, pulling it together, because when you are in a panic attack, you can't pull it together. But I remember, laying there and being like, I'm thankful for this bed. I'm thankful that I had food today. You start super basic, and then it really paints a bigger picture of like, wow, this little situation that I'm in is very small. And it really opens up your horizon and allows the peace to come in and to calm down. And then eventually for joy to like come in and replace that anxiety with the bigger, broader picture. And so it's something that I have to work on a regular basis, because I am more naturally bent towards work and
what's wrong that needs fixed.
And yeah.
But that's something that Joel said that stuck out to us, and this really had a lot of significance. And a lot of times people go, I want to be loved by this person in this particular way. And he encourages couples, don't look for the ways that your partner is not loving you in the ways you want to. Like, look for the ways that your partner is already loving you as they know how.
Yeah.
And I think that's super helpful. Like, how is this person already showing love to me? Because there's probably doing something that you can pull out. And I think when you do that, that softens a little bit. Because without that softening, you can't even work on the next thing you want to work on.
Yeah.
There needs to be some nice, tender soil for the seed for the next thing to grow, to be planted in. We need that.
Yeah. It's cultivating your own soil.
Yeah. And that's so much of what it is, too, because, like I said, along with all of these things that you want to work on your relationship is the self-awareness, the working on yourself. And, like, a lot of the gratitude practice is internal. You can practice it together, but so much of it is just like, me walking out throughout the day in a very ordinary way when I'm, like, driving to the grocery store. And my attention can go to all the things that are wrong or things I have to do, but like pausing in those moments and being like, thank you for what I do have. Thank you for what is good here. Like I mentioned on the podcast with Laura, the Anxiety of Joy podcast, I think one of the primary reasons I'm happier now than I was 5 years ago is because that's a much more regular part of my life, is this gratitude practice. And one of the things that makes me feel warmer even about us is the fact that I have regular gratitude in my mind for you. I just have to get better at saying it out loud and including you in on this experience of gratitude that I'm having. Because that's where I struggle, because I feel like if I thought it in my mind, like it's already happened, instead of like remembering that I actually have to bring it out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the things we have to work on never die.
I know. But, it's so good.
Yeah. But yeah, what are we telling ourselves? That's super important. What's the story that we're telling ourselves?
And how can we question that and get more curious about the story we're telling ourselves so that we can have a more clear version of it? And so this is actually something that this is a bit of a framework that we're thinking in the back of our minds when we work with a couple, like, what awareness do we need to bring? Like, this is actually what's happening. And then how do we actually move from there into acceptance? Like, this is the reality and I'm accepting it as it is, not because it's going to stay that way, not saying it's okay, but accepting that this is the current reality. And then moving into curiosity. Like, what do we need to know? What do we need to ask? How are we not seeing this clearly? How could we possibly look in this at a different way or in a better way? Or where can we include the positive where we were only noticing the negative? Like all of those things. How do we get really curious in that space? And from the curiosity, then we can move into a solution. And in that solution, there's recommitment. In that solution, there's gratitude. And so when we're talking to a couple either, like that's sort of the framework that's working in the back of our minds. And hopefully some of you can just apply that immediately to your lives. You can kind of walk through those 4 steps yourself. But that's the 4 steps that I'm thinking through in the back of my mind as we're like talking to a couple. And we were just talking to a client this week, and it's going like, well, how do we kind of take them through these steps? Because these are the things that happen that help us kind of move forward and help us move forward with another couple. And honestly, I think that a lot of the reasons we've even been able to do this is because we've done this in the context of community. It's not just between us. So we gave tips that we do in our relationship, but all of these things came from like a network of wisdom and of relationships of people that we surrounded ourselves by and who we've had access to and who we've spent time with.
So as you're listening, no matter where you are or what stage you're in, we just want to bless you to be extremely graceful with yourself. Give yourself a lot of grace. Bless you to receive and see the beauty around you, to take nourishment and strength from the beauty. And may you be courageous to make the decisions to help you step closer to the best version of yourself. Thanks for letting us be with you in this journey.
So thank you so much for listening to us. We hope some of these tips are helpful to you, even though they're very general. And basically that's what we can do on this podcast. We can be very general with some of the Enneagram work, some of the couples work. So if you need some help working out these things specifically in your own life and you're finding it hard to do by yourself, please contact us through the Art of Growth website. That's www.theartofgrowth.org. And maybe the framework alone is helpful to you, but maybe you need someone to come alongside you as you walk out through some of the discouragement or some of the disillusionment, the frustration you're experiencing, and you're having a hard time walking into that acceptance of where things are with the hope that they can change. And that hope comes through curiosity and really asking questions so that you can move into that recommitment and gratitude. And if you need some help walking that out, please contact Abby and I at The Art of Growth, and we would be happy to have a conversation with you about it. So thank you all so much for listening, and next week we will return with the 6th panel on relationships. Thank you to everyone who has recently left reviews on iTunes. We really appreciate it, and it helps people find the show. So thank you so much. Have a fantastic week.